Welcome to the Angrath Brawl Deck Tech. This is brought to you by NTGO Traders and CapeFearGames.com. Whether it's digital magic or paper magic, we've got you covered. So let's start off with the deck tech. We have Angrath, the Flame Chains. It's going to be 3 mana, black and a red, +1. Each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. -3, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it, it gains haste until end of turn. Sack it at the beginning of the next end step if it has a converted mana cost of 3 or less. -8, each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in his or her graveyard. Now, this is a quick reminder, we are playing the Brawl format. That's going to be a 60-card singleton format, and you can only have one of each card in your deck. It can only be black or red mana symbols on that card and standard legal cards. Now, what are we doing with Angrath? This is deck, we really want to highlight that +1 ability. Each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. So we have a lot of taxing effects in here and there in this deck. We have a lot of spot removal, a lot of board wipes, and a lot of hand disruption. We really want to attack our opponent's hand through either getting rid of their creatures on the battlefield, going for spot removal, or going for that +1 ability to make them discard a card and lose 2 life. In fact, let's go and take a look at some of the control cards that we're running. We're running a nice taxing package in here. We have stuff like Trespasser's Curse and Torment of Scarabs. We're going to be able to get down Trespasser's Curse pretty early on. Whenever they simply get a creature down, they're going to lose a life. We're going to gain a life. We're also running Harsh Mentor in here. It's going to be a great 2/2 body, but at the same time, let's say that they do go for any sort of activation. We're going to be able to deal that 2 damage to them if it's an artifact, creature, or land. If it's not a mana ability, it's going to be 2 damage. And then Torment of Scarabs is going to be another great way for us to kind of put some pressure at the beginning of their upkeep. They're going to lose 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. So roll out Torment of Scarabs, then follow up with Angrath, start going for that +1 ability. You're really going to be able to start putting some pressure on your opponent between these and some good spot removal. Now, outside of the taxing package, we are running a lot of board wipes in here. We want to make sure that we can protect Angrath as we go for that ultimate. So we have Yahini's Expertise, Bantu's Last Reckoning, Hour of Devastation. Now, with Hour of Devastation, it does catch a little bit of collateral damage because it's going to deal 5 damage to each creature and each non-boldest planeswalker. But it's always nice to have some board wipes in there. You know, if something does happen to Angrath, we have to go for Hour of Devastation. He's already on the battlefield. It's something that we can deal with. We can get back Angrath and really start attacking our opponent's hand. Or we can simply go Hour of Devastation and then follow it up with Angrath to really start going for that. Outside of the full board wipes, you're also running Fire Cannonade and Vana's Hunger. These aren't full board wipes, but having access to 3 mana to kind of either have your opponent sacrifice half their creatures or dealing 2 damage to kind of clean it up with a bunch of those little creatures is going to be really good for Angrath. Now, outside of the actual board wipes, we are running some really good spot removal in here. We've got Hour of Glory, Unlicensed Disintegration, and Fatal Push. The good thing about Unlicensed Disintegration is that if we control an artifact, it's going to deal 3 damage to that creature's controller. We're not running a ton of artifacts in here, but we do have a couple mana rock artifacts, so that's going to be another good way for us to get some little bit of extra value out of our spells going for that Unlicensed Disintegration. And we're also running Never to Return in Vraska's Contempt. So let's say that we are playing against a Planeswalker-based Brawl deck, or our opponent does happen to get on a Planeswalker, we can use Never or Vraska's Contempt to make sure we deal with that, or simply just exile some of their cards. Now, the good thing about Never to Return is that we can exile a target card from a graveyard to create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. In a singleton format, this is a really good card. Getting a little bit extra value out of a removal spell is always good, and you can have a 2/2 body that's going to help you protect Angrath. Now, outside of the removal, keeping the board clear, we also want to attack our opponent's hand in addition to Angrath's +1 ability. So we're running stuff like Duress, Lay Bare the Heart, Harsh Scrutiny. These are all great ways for us to early game kind of trade some of their big creature cards, or maybe a Planeswalker spell that they drew into, and really get rid of it to make sure we don't have to deal with it late game and help us close it out with Angrath. Now, outside of the control elements, we are running some aggro cards in here. We can really put some pressure on our opponent. We have stuff like Glorybringer, Yahini, Hazoret the Fervent, especially with the Yahini and the amount of removal that we're running in here. It's going to have haste, so we can immediately start swinging in with it. But whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1 counter on Yahini. That's really going to add up. And let's say we start going for some of our spot removal, we go for some of our burn spells on our opponent's creatures, and we end up with the Yahini that's in the range of 4/4, 5/5, 6/6 by the time when the game wears on. It's going to be a really good way for us to put some pressure on our opponent. Same thing with Glorybringer and Hazoret. Hazoret we can deal that 2 damage once we get down to basically almost being hell-bent with 1 or less cards in the hand. We can start swinging in, and then Glorybringer is going to be a great way for us to kind of double up on a creature body that can swing in or have 4 damage if we exert it to go and use it a little bit of spot removal. Now, outside of the actual aggro creatures in here, we're also running stuff like Earthshaker and the Crop Crasher. These are both low to the ground creature cards that, let's say that we've gone for a board wipe, we can follow up with one of these creatures and start swinging in at our opponent's Planeswalker, or simply just get it down and start going beat sticks in addition to that +1 ability off Angrath. Now, outside of the aggro creatures that we're running, we're also running some aggro spells in here. We've got Shock, Lightning Strike, Chandra's Pyro Helix. These are all burn spells that we can either target our opponent or target our opponent's creatures. We're also running Harness Lightning and Magma Spray. Unfortunately, you can't target our opponent with these spells, but at least we can use it as some redundant removal spell to take care of some of our opponent's creatures. Now, outside of the aggro spells, we're also going to want to run some really good utility stuff in here. We've got stuff like Argos Bloodfast and Sword Point Diplomacy. We're going to be spending a lot of our resources early on attacking our opponent, so we want to make sure that we can refuel our hand quicker than our opponent, especially with something like Argos Bloodfast. That's a great way to do that. Do not be worried about paying that 2 life to draw a card. You really want to treat your life as a resource in Magic. So let's say that you're playing Brawl deck and you have Argos Bloodfast in there and you're not sure if you want to go for that 2 life activation. As long as your opponent is at 0 life and you're at 1 life, you win the game, and that's what matters. So definitely want to be aggressive with that Argos Bloodfast to get those cards into your hand. If you can get it to flip, awesome, but most of the time you're going to be using it for that 2 life. And we're also running stuff like Sword Point Diplomacy. It kind of adds into that taxing effect that we're looking to do to our opponent. Reveal the top 3 cards. We can put that card in our hand unless an opponent pays 3 life, then exile the rest. So they don't want all 3. That's going to be 9 life that they're taking, 9 life loss off of that. Either that, most of the time you're going for Sword Point Diplomacy, you're going to get about 1 to 2 cards, high impact cards in the hand, because simply they don't want to pay that 3 life. Or let's say that it's late game, they can't pay the life. You're going to be able to just simply draw 3 cards off of that, which is always really nice. Outside of these situational draw cards, we're also running some just good 3 converted mana cost draw spells. Live Fast and Painful Lesson. Essentially, draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. It's one of the best things you can do in Magic. Drawing cards and losing life. I love it. Now, outside of the utility draw spells, we have some good utility spells for the deck. We have stuff like a Braid. It's going to double up as a removal spell. It can also destroy target artifact. Once again, Tormenting Voice is going to keep us online with that card draw. We really want to keep our hand moving in this deck to make sure we have an answer for whatever our opponent's going to be rolling out. And we're also running a couple pieces of ramp in here. We have Manolith and Cultivator's Caravan. Who knows, maybe we get in a spot where we can go for that Crew 3 activation with some of our creatures. Then we can start swinging it with the 5/5 body. But mainly Cultivator's Caravan is going to be in here for some good mana ramp in here. Now, as far as some of our utility creatures, we are running Kitesail Freebooter in here. Really good way to attack our opponent's hand, make them spend some removal to get that card back. And then Dire Fleet Daredevil is going to keep us open late game when we have a lot of extra mana. Let's say our opponent casts a spell. We can simply just go for Dire Fleet Daredevil, cast it out of their graveyard, and that might be enough to help us close the game out. And then stuff like Soul Scar Mage. It has prowess, so we can start chaining together some spells. We can get in a little bit of extra damage, but it's mainly in here to kind of eat up some blockers if they're going to be swinging in Angrath. Now, once we've kind of locked the game down, we've put some really big pressure on our opponent, one of the things that we want to do is be able to close the game out if we can't get to that Angrath ultimate. So we have a couple finishers in here. We have Torment of Hellfire. Cut is not really going to be the finisher. The back side of the card is really what we're looking at. It's going to be the ribbons part. So with Torment of Hellfire, we're looking at double black and then X. Each opponent's going to lose 3 life unless they sacrifice an online permanent or discard a card. So let's say that we go for a board wipe to blow up our opponent's board. The following turn we go for a really big Torment of Hellfire. That might be enough to go ahead and close the game out between the Angrath activations. And let's say that we've used Cut earlier in the game. We can use that ribbons out of the graveyard to make sure we can really put some life loss on our opponent. Now that is going to be it for the video. If there's any cards that I missed, or if you have any other card suggestions for actual deck, hop in the comments down below. When I do deck techs like this, I'm not saying, hey, this is the final product. I'm simply saying, hey, this is a starting point, and then you can add or remove cards as you'd like as you go from there. And especially if you'd like to update in the comments, as people start to look for building different Brawl decks, they'll be able to use some of your comments as a way to help them build their deck. But that's going to be it for the video. And in fact, if you enjoyed it, like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.